right, so for technical questions today, please use the Q&A box for questions relating to audio, visual, any technical questions. If you have census-related questions, subject matter questions, please try and use the chat box because we each keep eyes on them for different reasons. So you are muted for this presentation. You are welcome to send in all questions, of course, via chat, and we will be responding both via chat and also I'll be reading them to Lindsay as we go, so we'll be able to take care of them. If you have any issues using your computer audio, please note that in your top left hand on the menu drop-down, you will see Communicate or an audio tab, depending on what platform you're using. If you click it, you'll see Audio Connection. And you can always use the call-in as opposed to the computer join. So you'd be able to hear us through your phone while you see us on the computer, or you can see and hear us through the computer if you use the computer audio. So it's up to you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay for the core presentation as I pass the ball to her and make her the presenter. And she is going to take us away into our first convening of the Community Action Complete Count Committee. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Lil. First of all, I want to apologize for the reschedule. We had a bit of a snafu last week, and I'm glad that some of you have been able to join us today. We're doing a basic presentation today. So we're just going to go through the PowerPoint that we've been presenting across the country since April to give you the basics of the census and the basics of what we're asking our network to do and why it's important. We will be doing more intense, in-depth trainings later this fall and into the winter. But just wanted to give everybody an overview today. So to start with, this is your census team. It's me and Lil. I'm full-time on the project. I get Lil about, well, it depends, but I only get her part-time. And then I've got two subject matter experts, Jim Masters, which I'm sure some of you know, and his colleague, Alan Stansberry. And we're currently in the process of adding a program associate. So our team will grow a little bit, but this is it. Just to get us started, we're gonna go through. Right, well, I've already done this, but we'll do it again in some ways. What is the census? Why does it matter to community action? What is being done? What can you do? And what are our next steps? And to dive right in, the census is actually something that started off in 1790. So we've been doing it in this country for over 200 years. And it's codified in the Constitution. So this is Article 1, Section 2. And it says that we count every person who lives in the United States. This means that we include people who have green cards. We include people with visas. We include people who don't have any documentation. We count diplomats who live in Washington, D.C. and New York City. If you live in the United States on April 1st, 2020, the U.S. decennial census will count you. The Census Bureau does the American Consumer Survey and other surveys around the country throughout the year. They do the decennial census every 10 years. So this is a big deal because of the things that the census count does for the country. But sometimes people confuse it with other surveys that the Census Bureau does. This is the one that happens every 10 years and that is directly in the Constitution. Oh, my button's not working. There we go. So the 2020 census, it's going to be about 8 questions. It's not the in-depth long form. They will want people to put the age and years, month and day, and the year of birth for every household member. They have the person filling out the form put their information in first, and then they list every other member of the household. They ask if you have a Hispanic origin. They ask what race you are. This year the form has changed, and so you are able to put in whatever race you want. So if you are a mixed race, you can put both of your races in. That's one difference between this and the 2010 census. Relationship, they want to know how each person is related to the person filling out the form, which is person 1. They want to know if you're male or female. They want to know if you own or rent your home. And then they've got a couple of operational questions like how many people lived here on April 1st? And they ask that because they want to make sure that you counted every person who lives in your house. Pretty simple. Note that there is no citizenship question on this questionnaire list. The citizenship question was a big thing this summer. It was a potential question. The Supreme Court struck it down, and that has been upheld. So the citizenship question will be off the table for 2020, which is good news because it would have been disenfranchised about 9 million, lower estimates, up to 16 million people who they feel wouldn't have filled the census out if that question had been there. So we count everybody, and then we use that census data for a lot of different purposes. The two most important to community action is apportionment and federal dollars distribution. Apportionment means that they add up everybody in the country and they divide that giant number by 435. And they do that to determine how many congressional representatives, how many constituents each congressional representative district has. So right now the number is around 720,000 people per congressional district. I haven't seen estimates yet on what the new number will be, but this is important because places where population is growing, California, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, North Carolina, Colorado, all of these places where population has gained stand to gain an additional congressional member. And if your congressional delegation in your state goes from 8 to 9, you have that much more power in Congress. So it changes the way Washington works for your state. There are other states out there that stand to lose congressional representatives. Illinois, Minnesota, Ohio, New York, Pennsylvania, all of those places have seen their population dwindle a little bit. So getting out every person to be counted in 2020 is crucial because they might lose a congressional seat if they don't do that. This is important to community action because we want to make sure that we have our members, the people we serve, have their fair share of representation in Congress. If you don't have your fair share of representation, then your Congress people can't do things for you like pass CSBG funding to make sure that our programs are fully funded so we can do the work we need to do on the ground. Once they figure out how many congressional representatives there are in each state, the states will redistrict. So the census will determine redistricting. If you gain a seat, you have to divide your state up into different congressional seats. If you lose a seat, you have to let the rest of your congressional district absorb the territory of the lost congressional member. So after the 2020 census, all of our state legislative offices will redistrict all of our states. They will also redistrict state legislative districts, school districts, and voting precincts, which, depending on where you are, can really impact your political power. It also will distribute federal dollars to states. So I mentioned CSBG funding. The number of dollars that we get in each state from the federal government is directly tied to your census count. And I know that all of us do community needs assessments, and those numbers actually come from the census as well. So it does impact community action quite a bit.
Lindsay, let me stop you for 1 second if I can. There's a question that came in that is very timely. From Carla Garrett, we need to know, is there an other or prefer not to answer question on gender? And I believe it is a binary choice, but I wanted to refer the question to you.
Yes, right now it is a binary choice. So it is either male or female. My guess is that with the political climate the way it is, 2030 we'll see another option. It was a conversation this year that they decided against adding anything, so it is simply male or female. So binary choice, yes. And thank you for asking.
Thank you. My only question so far.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carla, for the question.
Great. So I jumped ahead, so it's good that you caught me, Lil. I'll get back to this for a quick second. The census information that we gather next year will also be used for government planning, not just federally, but locally. Municipalities use census data to figure out where they should put the next firehouse, or if they need a new hospital, or if they need new schools. Businesses also use the census to determine where they should put their businesses. If you don't have the workforce, or if you don't have, if you're an ice cream shop and there aren't enough kids in your neighborhood, it's not a heavily kid-happy population, then you might not want an ice cream store. So the census data really is used everywhere. And enforcing voting rights and civil rights legislation, the census is used to determine where people who need those protections live, and they use it in other ways to enforce those laws. So as I mentioned, the Census Bureau, it's not just a pop-up entity. They are a year-round, stable government bureaucracy. It's a building. They are from the they're housed in the Department of Commerce, and they do the long survey, the American Consumer Survey, I think every 5 years. But they started the decennial the day after the last decennial wrapped up. So the day after the 2010 finished, they started working on the 2020. They did lessons learned. They tried to tweak what they were going to figure out what they were going to tweak in the next census, and then they started building it out. Things really ramped up last March when the Census Bureau sent the questionnaire to Congress in March of 2018. Congress needs to approve the questionnaire, which is one of the reasons the citizenship question was so controversial. It wasn't put through due process. But they send these questions to Congress, and then they start opening their regional centers. And what they're out there doing right now, you may have heard that there are Census Bureau employees knocking on doors right now. They've been working to clean and verify a complete list of all housing in America for probably about 5 years. So they've been working hard to clean that data, and they're in a process right now of verifying the last third of the address file. So they went to Amazon, they went to the USPS, they matched data. They've been surveying new complexes for a while, and now they're verifying the last third of those addresses so they know which households need to fill out the census and what their street address is so they can do mailing, or they need to determine that this is a super rural district where the inhabitants use P.O. boxes in town, and so they know that they're going to have to go walk and hang door hangers on those doors in order to get people to fill out the census there. In January, we will start enumeration, so counting people in rural Alaska. There are actually some areas in Alaska where you can only get there when it's frozen over. So they will begin that in January. In February, and this pertains to us, they will start doing group quarters. So they'll be working with homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters, assisted living facilities, college dorms, anywhere where you have a group living situation. February is when those will be enumerated, working with the administration of those facilities to make sure that all of the residents are counted in one way, shape, or form. And then I'm going to switch to the next slide because this is our stuff. In March, invitations will be sent to respond online. So there are some changes from the 2010 census this year. One of them is that we're kicking off online response for the census. So as of next year, you will be able to fill out your census form online. They're hoping that about 60% of the American population fills out their survey online. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting experiment. But you will get a letter in the mail. Everybody will get a letter in the mail with an online code in the middle to end of March, inviting you to go online, put your code in, and fill out your census form online. The March 12th is also when that online collection will begin. March 16th and April 3rd, they'll send those reminder letters and postcards saying, hey, you got a letter last week, go find it, you need to go online and do this. April 1st is Census Day. So no matter when you fill out your census next year, you go back to April 1st. And so one of the questions, if you'll recall, was there anyone else living at this household, in this household on April 1st? So I call it a snapshot. We're taking a snapshot of America because people move around. And if you have a divorced couple and they've got 2 kids, it might be that the kids spend, let's say, the week with their mom because they go to school. Census Day is Wednesday, April 1st. And so the mom would be the one to include those kids on their census form. because the kids are there on April 1st. But if the dad fills out his form on April 15th, he's going to have to think back to what kind of a day April 1st was and where those kids were to make sure that he knows he doesn't fill out the form with the kids because their mother should. So April 1st is a pretty important snapshot day, and that's what, no matter when you fill out the form, and you can fill out the form between March 12th and July 24th, you always think back about what was going on in your house on April 1st and who was living there. April 8th to 16th, they'll send reminder letters, and this is when they'll send the first paper questionnaire to most of the houses. Then they'll send a final postcard before May 4th when they start knocking doors. And so this is when Census Bureau employees will come to the houses that have not filled out the form, and they'll knock on the door and say, hey, you haven't filled out your census form. They'll be able to do the form with you on, like, right then and there on your doorstep, or you can say, okay, I'll go do it. And they'll come back, I think, up to 6 times. So 95% of households will receive their census invitation by mail. 5% will be dropped off. So those rural addresses that I was talking about, those places that don't get regular mail service, that are pretty inaccessible, the Census Bureau will actually drop off their census invitation. And 1% of households will just be counted in person by a census taker. And this includes homeless populations because they will be counted as well. So they're saying that they want 60% to fill out the forms online, but they also estimate that 40% of households will require in-person follow-up. And there are lots of reasons for that. Every cycle, every 10 years is a cycle. So every decennial, the census hires hundreds of thousands of people, and they're going to spend $15.6 billion actually to complete the count. This is the most expensive count we have ever done, and we've been doing this since 1790. This is also the second highest federal expenditure except for the military. Did I do that right? I believe that's right. She'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, the biggest ground operation with the highest cost. Absolutely, with a non-military moment.
Ground up. Yep. And in 1970, it only cost $16 a household to count, and that is in 2019 dollars. They are estimating that it'll be $107 per household next year in costs. And then there's a variety of reasons we'll get into in a minute. But what's important to us on the fiscal side is that for every person we count, it means about $2,000 per person per year in federal funding. So that statistic varies based on state. I've seen it as high as, I think, $3,700 per person. I've seen it as low as $1,300 per person. But the census is what the federal government uses to allocate federal dollars to each of the states. So if you miss 10 people in your community, you've missed $20,000 a year. But you didn't just miss it for that year, you've missed it for the next 10 years. So you've really missed $200,000 in federal funding that you could have had to fund your programs. Children 1 to 5 are one of the most common groups that are left off of the census. And if you miss a 3-year-old, you just missed their entire elementary school education. Your location, your community will not get federal dollars for that child's schooling. Even if the child attends public schools, the money won't be there because they were not counted. So this becomes a pretty crucial thing for Americans, and actually anyone living in America. It's not just Americans. But okay, so we are talking about why it matters to us. These are the salient points, so I'm going to go over them one more time. It determines federal funding for essential federal programs. It also informs Community Action Agency planning, strategy, and operations. That's your CNA. The populations we serve are often the most undercounted, which means that our communities are losing their fair share of dollars and representation. This is the crux of why Will and I have a project, and we are doing census engagement work. I'm sure that these are all very familiar programs for you. $77 billion, about 9% of the $864 billion in total federal spending comes to us, which is cool. We get almost 10%. CSBG, LIHEAP, Head Start, TANF, WIOA, I know that. Special programs for the aging, Title III. These things are all programs that rely on census counts to inform federal dollars. So what makes this so hard? Why do we have such a struggle, and why is there an undercount? We've got a really interesting environment coming up next year. This is one of the things, these are several of the things that are driving the cost. First of all, we have a very mobile population. The average for Americans is 14 to 18% of us move every year. In our communities, it's about 30, which I think is a low statistic, but that's the one I've got. So 30% of our people move every year, which makes sense. You have a job, you lose your job, you get evicted, you stay with family for a couple of months. Sister gets sick and tired of you, you have to move on. So our communities are very mobile. There's a constrained fiscal environment. Congress is currently fighting over how much money they're going to spend on the census. Some people say that doing 60% online should lower costs. Others say online is a new technology, we're not sure it's going to work, so we have to make sure we have the ground forces. So there's a big fight in Congress over how much they're going to spend. The technology is new and different, and if any of you shopped on Amazon Prime Day, you might know that there have been some really big issues, and so we're hoping that the Census Bureau has learned from those issues, and so we don't have any crashes next year. But that could be a real problem for us. We also have an information explosion. All of us carry phones, little computers in our hands at all times. Mine dings constantly. I get news updates, I get text messages, I have multiple email boxes. I do have Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook on my phone. It's constant, and it can be really overwhelming. And a lot of people get nothing but junk mail in their actual physical mailboxes most of the time, or they get something from some credit card company that looks like a census form, but really isn't. So it's hard for the Census Bureau to cut through that clutter. There's also a strong distrust in government, partially the political climate of the day, but also just our changing population. We have a lot of people from overseas who've never done a census before because it's not something that their government did in their home country. Now they live in America. We do a census, and so there's an information gap that we need to overcome. Our population also has a lot more of informal complex living arrangements. This means the grandmother whose granddaughter has been living with her for 5 months, even though that grandmother thinks that kid might go back to live with her parents any day now, if she lives with her grandmother on April 1st, the grandmother counts her on the census form. But that's how kids 1 through 5 often slip through the cracks, because people assume that somebody else is going to put them on their form. So these are the things that we're facing as to why the environment is difficult. People who are hard to count are often hard to locate, hard to persuade to participate. They're hard to interview or hard to contact. Homeless people, they move around a lot. They're hard to find sometimes. And if you do find them, it might be hard to persuade them to participate. They might not trust the government. Hard to interview folks might have language barriers. They might have low literacy. The census will be translating all of their materials into 59 different languages. And the phones are also new this year. So in addition to the online possibility, you can also complete the census on the phone for the first time this year. And they will have 13 different languages to do that on the phones. So we're hoping that those things help. But even if the form's translated into your language and you can't read because you have low literacy, you're still going to have trouble with that form. Hard to locate folks. Some people don't want to be found. Other people are in new or forgotten housing that they're missing somehow on their intensive address verification. We have some folks who are suspicious of the government. Some people are undocumented, and they are afraid that if they fill out the census form, they will be deported. They will not be, and I can say that with extreme confidence. They will not be, but it is a fear that we have to contend with, especially if you have one house with mixed status, or you have a house where you've got one family and their relatives are staying with them, and if their landlord found out, they get in trouble because it was a violation of their lease. People like that don't want to fill out their census forms, but they have to. And one of the best messages we've seen for these folks is that for every person that fills out that form, they're bringing $2,000 of federal funding into their community. which seems to be a really, really strong motivator for some of these folks to say, okay, I can do this. So the hard to count, we have immigrants, people who have low income, young children, single parents, disabled folks, people of color. These are the categories from the actual census, but it could be a slide from a community action slide. These are our people. These are the people that we serve on a daily basis, which is another reason that we're involved. All right, Lil, do you want to talk us through a couple?
Sure, glad to. So what's being done to help get out the count? Some of you may have been on other webinars that we've done or may have seen us in person, so we appreciate actually you bearing with us to get everybody on the CACCC, which we sometimes call the CAC3, kind of up to the same point and talk about what we're doing so we have base knowledge, which is actually why we're recording. So what can be done? The Census Bureau is partnering and broadly partnering across the country. They are looking for people who want to increase the census participation, and they really are wanting to make the census work in each community. There are, in fact, 5 regional offices for the census, and they have partner offices. I'm sorry, 6, isn't it? 6 regional offices. I was confusing it with the different funders' regions. And they are going to be opening, what is it, Lindsay, 239 local partnership offices across the country between now and the census?
It's something like that. 248 is the number that I've heard, okay. And it varies by state.
But these, of course, Los Angeles, Denver, Atlanta, Philadelphia, New York, these folks, Chicago, these offices are open, throughout the years. These are the regional census offices. But they're starting partnership offices in each state, some multiple ones in different states. If you go to census.gov, you can find these. We have a list of things we're going to get to resources. You are a member of one of these, a complete count committee, one of the only national complete count committees. But the whole point of these, and this is the census publication on how to get one started in a community. There are statewide CCCs. Many states have them. Some are even funding them with some resources. There are community level, county level, city level CCCs. If your community does not have one, and you can find out by clicking on the link, we will be sharing the PowerPoint presentation as well as posting the recording on the website and on the census page. You can look up and see if there's already one in your area. If there isn't, this is one of our first asks of you as a CCC member, is to talk to the right person at your agency about whether or not your agency should get one started. And the Census Bureau has actually got all sorts of materials to help with that. Ideally, what this does is brings together different parts of the community within that community to make sure that the whole community is being counted. Local knowledge is what matters on so many levels. You can find this on our website as well as on the census website. It's about 30 pages, I think, in total. It is an outreach course with an introduction, a refresher on what the census is, how to do outreach. There are people even in our network who haven't done a huge amount of outreach because, let's face it, we have waiting lists for all our programs, and doing outreach sometimes is kind of counterproductive. So if you've never done outreach, there's actually a section of this toolkit that will help you learn how to do that. Identifying the barriers for folks in the community. Lindsay talked about the 4 different quadrants kind of that make up the hard to count or people who are often undercounted. And you saw the infographic on the different kinds of groups. Families with children, low-income people, people of color, immigrants. This is who Community Action was born and still serves today. So we understand barriers to participation better than a lot of networks. This section is still a really good outreach on how to do it and some messaging. How to tailor your outreach and how to use the census's resources. Now, the only challenge, and part of the reason we're doing this project, is the census not only has the census not only has a number of resources, they have hundreds of resources. And we're going to what we've done is moving to funnel that down for community action. We know the only thing you have less of than grant money is time, right? So what we're doing is pulling these resources together, finding the most effective ones, and pulling them together for you. It is really cool that the Community Action logo is featured with these kinds of national partners as part of the Census Counts 2020 consortium. I mean, this is Native Americans, this is people of color, this is Latinos, this is African Americans, American Indians, Asian Americans, Council for a Strong America, LGBTQ Task Force, all working together to make sure that our communities are counted. As we think about this, you can go to censuscounts.org, which is the site for this group, and take the pledge to be counted and to educate the community about the census. It also signs you up for some really good informational pieces. So before I hand it back to Lindsay to go through these pieces, let me sort of give you the high-level view of what we're doing through the partnership. So we are educating and increasing awareness. That's what we're doing today, but we're going to end this with what we're doing in the community, in the CCC for community action, why you're here today than just to learn about the census. We want to mobilize the network to take action. This is the sweet spot for having one person from every agency in this group. We are, as I mentioned, curating and generating resources for community action and equipping people in the field, you in your agencies, to conduct effective local outreach efforts with a minimum of resources needed, both time and money. With that, I'm going to move it ahead and hand it back to Lindsay to kind of go over some of the pieces.
Thank you. So as part of Community Action's efforts, we have a census working group. We took the 9 states with the largest hard-to-count populations and invited them to join an advisor committee. So one of the things that all of these people are doing is pushing the census work in their own state. They also are a sounding board for us, and they do things like run through presentations before we give them, just to make sure we're not missing anything or confusing folks. And there's a really great group of people who have been very active and involved. We added Ron Gilbert from Alabama because Alabama's on the ball. These people have pins and buttons and slick materials, and they have been active for Census 2020 for longer than anybody else. And they are the most organized that we've seen in the entire country. So we included Ron because we wanted his expertise. We'll mention that there are materials coming out of our ears. There's so much information about all of this. So what we're doing for you is curating that to things that are specific to community action. One of the things that the two of us will be working on in the next few weeks is a toolkit, not unlike the toolkit that the partnership puts out for Community Action Awareness Month. That should be a lot of plug-and-play stuff. So you can go to this website, check back often. You can find resources that we have curated for you that are specific to us. And as Will mentioned, and most of you should know, we also have enacted the Community Action Complete Count Committee. I do like to call it the CAC3. The goal behind us doing this was to have one person in every agency pushing for the census. It might not be that that one person does all of the census work. It could be that they route the materials to the appropriate people, or it could be that they're the key person and they do most of the efforts on the ground of organizing throughout the next 9 months or so. We will be doing trainings and webinars. We are trying to make it easy for everybody to plug and play. So one of the things we don't want everybody to freak out about, we're not asking you to dedicate tons of time and tons of money, things you don't have, in order to do census work. The Community Action has actually been involved in every census since the first one after our inception. So 1970 was the first year that census and Community Action went hand in hand, which makes a lot of sense. Again, the people who are undercounted are the people we serve. We are in the process with the Census Counts 2020 Coalition. We're in the process of identifying key people in all of our communities to reach out to. So if you don't have a complete count committee in your area, there's a very good chance that there is another entity from one of our 16 national partners that wants to have a complete count committee formed. And so we're hoping to link those people up with you in the near future to give you more of a group, a natural group. One of the things about the complete count committees is that it should be a lot like a tripartite board. So you should have elected officials, you should have businesses. We in the last Community Action Complete Count Committee newsletter, we had a link to a webinar on business. And then you should have the people that we serve. I mean, all of these people should sit at the table of a Complete Count Committee as well. We are also, at convention, we unveiled our Census Academy, which is on the Moodle platform. For those of you who don't know it, it's really cool. It's super cool, and we hope to have time to do a quick demo. This one. Will, I want you to talk about this one.
Glad to. So what we have available for you as of right now is, and I'm trying to bring it up in a separate window, but we shall see, doesn't always interface well in live time with WebEx, is we have Community Action Academy. We have Roma courses there. We have all sorts of learning community courses there. We have a number of them. We also have, we're planning for 2, but there's one live course now, which is individuals getting community action certified, not by the census, by us, on the basics about the census, how to talk to people about the census. It's a 5-module curriculum with a few short quizzes in it, and it will take less than 2 hours to complete. The best of all is that it's free and on demand. It can be done through a computer, if you're sitting at one. It can be done on a mobile device, on a tablet. It is available across internet platforms. There is also a place to have a chat room on it for questions and answers. Lindsay and I will both be monitoring it and looking for that. We have tested it. It is ready to go. So if you don't already have an account and haven't seen this platform, the link is here on the page. Go to moodle.communityactionpartnership.com. The registration is simply your email and a password. It's not complicated. And once you're there, you would click on all courses. Then you'd look at the census courses, and it would be Ask Me About the Census. And it would be some of the material you've seen here, but broken down with additional census materials, handouts and flyers, things to look at, things you could use in your agency. You move through it. You do the quizzes for the 4 sections. One's an intro, no quiz. And at the end of it, if you pass them all with 80%, I think we said, or better, you and via your agency, of course, will be certified. More than one person in an agency can do it. We encourage you to do that and to lead other people through it. We also make all of our materials available to you. So if you want to go through the course and then teach people at your agency, that's great too. Everybody doesn't have to do this, but as long as they're in community action, they're welcome. It is free. It is accessible 24/7. It's a combination of video recordings, the PowerPoint slides, and the materials, as I mentioned. The last thing is, Lindsay talked about working with other folks in your community for a complete count committee or just to help with a count. The Academy is for community action only. We ask that only folks in agencies register and take the class. That's because we simply have limits to how many people we can have in there. I think it's 1,500 now. That said, if you have partners who need training materials, who need help, anything that's on our regular website that she showed you, communityactionpartnership.com census program page, anything there you're welcome to include. And we are working on turning this curriculum into a series of zip files, a PDF with a separate quiz so that you could use it with your partners. It's not that the material is proprietary to community action, just a log into the Academy. So we have worked hard on it. We hope you find it useful. We'd really like your feedback. If you go through the course, please send us an email. Let us know what you like, more importantly, what you didn't like so we can fix it. But it is live now and waiting for you at moodle.communityactionpartnership.com. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Lindsay.
Great, thank you. I wanted Lil to go through that because she did the lion's share of work setting it all up, and I appreciate her. So I wanted her to be able to talk about her creation. All right, so I hope that we've outlined that there's an opportunity for community action. There's maybe a problem to make sure that all of our folks are counted. What can you do? We are asking that you take a little bit of time to figure out who makes up the hard count in your community. What are their major concerns? What are some of the ways that you can mitigate those concerns? We encourage everybody to connect with the census on a local level. They have partnership specialists that will come to your agency. They'll meet with you, they'll do a talk. They will, during this actual census period between March 12th and July 24th, they will actually come and enumerate for you. So they'll help people fill out their forms. So make that connection and use their resources. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago if they were going to have tchotchkes. They often have like squeeze toys and keychains and swag, T-shirts and stuff. I don't know if they're doing that this year with budgetary concerns, and if they are, I don't know when that's going to happen. But if they do, if you connect with your census partners, your census partnership specialists, they can get those materials to you. And they do have pamphlets and stuff that can be helpful. And figuring out where your local census office is also useful. Again, they will have about 248 around the country. There's also a special partnership this cycle with libraries. So most communities, the theory is that most communities have a library within 15 miles that holds most water. It's got a few holes, but that holds. And the librarians are being trained to answer questions about the census and to be helpful. And part of this partnership is because we are pushing folks online, and online access is free and readily available at a library. And in theory, there's one in every community. So that's somewhere, yes, well.
Yeah, it's okay. I was trying to do the visual rather than the interrupt. But before we get off this in the community, another good question from Carla. Will any promotional print materials be provided, or will it just be electronic materials we pay to print ourselves? That's a question with a twofold answer. From us, it'll be a toolkit just like Community Action Month that you would print on site or at a printer or any way you want to do it. I will say, if you contact your census office or your census partnership specialist, the census materials, you actually can request the printed materials, and they are really happy to share them. Lynn's, anything to add? And then also back to you.
No, I just want to reiterate that we're currently compiling a list of states that have money available to do some of this work. Again, we're trying to make it cheap, easy, and or free. I mean, we're trying to make this really easy for folks because we understand that you don't have time and you don't have money. We're also, and we recognize that we're asking for some staff time, which we'll get into in a minute. But so we are compiling a list of states that are offering grants for that. So trying to think, I think just heard of Illinois and Missouri that just put out RFPs for people and like $10,000 to $15,000 stipends. I've seen as much as $135,000, I think. So there's some money out there, but it really depends on the state. And we will be publishing that information as we get it. And if anybody knows of a pocket of money in your state and you don't mind sharing it, we would appreciate that as well. So how do you find your hard to count? You probably have a pretty good sense of who they are in your agency already. But CUNY, the City University of New York, was given a stipend to create this mapping tool. We're not going to go through it today, but you can mess around with it on your own. You can dial in on your town and see where they have lower population response rates. And where people are, sometimes it's because they have low internet. So this bar on the right-hand side will tell you why the particular section you're looking at has a hard-to-count population that's higher than most. You can see if they're immigrants or if there's internet access issues, if it's a rural area. It'll help you determine who in your community might be hard to count. The census also has the Roam tool. This is the response outreach area mapper. A score of 25 is considered a really bad score because it means 25% of that area didn't respond to the last census. And that's not just decennial, that's also the American Consumer Survey. So they keep track of these things so they can figure out where they need to concentrate efforts to make sure people are counted. So as far as networking, partnering, connecting, and building in your community, you're already part of the Community Action Complete Count Committee. We're asking you to find a local Complete Count Committee. One of the reasons this is important, I was in Knoxville, Tennessee back in April, and they were about to meet with their Complete Count Committee. And the biggest ask that the community action folks had for their committee was for the mayor to talk to the police department. Because they wanted her to have pass an edict that the police would not sweep homeless areas in the days around enumeration efforts for homeless folks. They understood how important it was for them to make sure that all of their homeless people were counted, and this was something that local government could help, working with nonprofits to make sure it was more likely for them to catch homeless folks where they lived if the police didn't go and sweep them. So that's one of the things that the Complete Count committees can do. Again, figure out who the Census Partnership Specialist is in your area. Use them as a resource. Ask them for printed materials. Ask them to come to your meetings to talk about the census. We know that not everybody trusts the census. We get that. But if you think that some people won't trust them, having them come around a lot might engender some sort of some faith in them and their presence and make it then more useful for you during enumeration. Again, we will be sending out local affiliates that are for the groups that are involved. We also are asking people to recruit to fill census jobs. So those 420,000 people have to come from somewhere. So A, we often help our clients find jobs, and so this is good part-time work. The pay rate, it depends on where you are, but it's between $13 and $27, I think, dollars an hour. 27 is going to be New York, right? But these are part-time jobs. Frontline staff members can become enumerators. They can do it on the weekends. And we're trying to lock down. Some people are concerned if they're on benefits and they make money doing census enumeration, they're worried they're going to lose their benefits. We're chasing down some rumors that there might be some state-by-state waivers for that. And so hopefully we'll have that information put together so we can publicize that. But one of the reasons we're pushing to recruit to fill these jobs is because having somebody from your community talking to you about the census, it's a trusted messenger. So if one of our frontline staff members is talking to people about the census, on the clock for the census, they have more gravitas. And if it's somebody that looks like the community, talks like the community, acts like the community, it's a lot easier for them to get responses at a door than if it's some random stranger or somebody who's not from around there, who doesn't have the same accent or the same skin color, all of those sorts of things. So we are encouraging you to do that. Oh, and those jobs can be found at 2020census.gov/jobs, or just type in a Google search, census jobs. Our partners are doing a lot of messaging. So tomorrow, I want to plug this. I think it's 3 o'clock Eastern time. One of our partners is doing a webinar on the messaging that's working for young children. So 1 to 5, that age range is really crucial, and they're often missed in the census. So Linda Lake from Lake Research Partners did a bunch of focus group messaging to figure out how to get those parents and those grandparents, those guardians, to fill out census forms. And they're going to do an hour-long webinar tomorrow. So if you have a head start, you should try to join. And if you have a lot of kids in your community, you should consider doing that. I know that they will be posting it, so if you can't make it, you can watch it at a later date. And Lil and I are working on doing a community action specific webinar with Head Start. And one of the groups that's actually doing the webinar tomorrow. So there will be more opportunities, but just wanted to raise that. We will have more messaging that is hard to count population specific coming out, and we will send that along. We will have information that you can print, resources, postcards. If you have a transportation service of some kind, your drivers can have postcards and hand them out. We found coloring pages, so if you have a Head Start program or a waiting room where kids sit, you can have them do census coloring pages and take them home and hopefully put them on the fridge. Technical assistance, that's us. If you have questions, if you have comments, ideas, thoughts, anything, shoot us an email. We are here to be sounding boards. We are here to be gophers in a lot of ways. Sorry, Lil, we're gophers. We will track down the right information for you. So if you have a question, please, no questions too small. If you have it, somebody else has it too, I promise. We are doing social media campaigns and the communication campaigns. You've been getting some of our emails. Social media, we're at CA Partnership on Twitter and on Facebook. On Twitter and Instagram. And we are doing census memes that you should shamelessly steal. Please take our stuff. That stuff will also be in our toolkit. So you'll have opportunities for that. But we encourage you to just take what we've given you, put it up, and go with it. We are trying to make this plug and play and easy for you. So we are working on getting you that messaging. And again, the most commonly effective message right now for somebody who is a client of Community Action is to say, if you fill out the census, your community will get federal funding for you, and it's worth about $2,000. That's a really powerful message that it seems to resonate. Our communities are so diverse, and we will be getting additional messaging that works with specific communities. So in addition to the Head Start webinar we're going to do, we're trying to work with the NAACP and the Urban League to do one on African Americans. We're trying to hit all the big groups in the LAO, the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. We're partnering with them to do one that might be in Spanish. We'll see about that. But we're working with them because that's a whole population, especially because of the fears of the citizenship question that we're really concerned about. And what we're really asking our agencies to do is to have some kind of a plan. It doesn't have to be a super in-depth plan, but have a plan on how you can touch each of your clients 7 times about the census. This can be a poster hung in the front hall. This can be that coloring sheet. This can be asking a new client, hey, have you heard about the census? Or have you filled out your census form yet? Or did you get your census form in the mail? Any of those things, just to start a quick conversation, those count as touches. And we want you to fold them into the things that you do on a daily basis. So we're not asking for big chunks of time or financial resources, just simple little touches. And we're hoping that everyone else in your community is also doing those touches. So they're getting it from the pediatrician, they're getting it from their mayor, if they like the mayor, or their local representatives. They're getting it from the local store that has a sign in the front window that says, did you fill out your census form? So we're hoping that by having communities come together and each of them doing 7 touches will inundate people with this message that the census is really important, it's safe, and it's easy. And all of this works for us because we are trusted advisors. We are trusted messengers. People come to us when they have nothing, and we help them. So we have some sway. Oh, really quick on the trigger. So this is our video. It is up on our website. So if you go to communityactionpartnership.com/census, you can see Derek Simpson. He is on the Community Action Partnership Board. He is also the executive director of the Long Beach Community Action Partnership, and they have a studio. And so they did a 7-minute video. If you do nothing else for the census, and you should, but if you do nothing else, please have everyone in your agency watch this video just to give them a sense of what we're doing and why. 7 minutes out of their day, they can have some insights into what's important and why. And then if they need more information, we can do that. But this is a good primer. We've got a few questions just to run through, and then we're going to open it up for additional questions. So send them in to Lil. She'll read them off. Do I participate if I'm not a citizen? Yes. Every person who lives in America on April 1st, 2020 gets counted. If you are a tourist from the Netherlands, you do not get counted. But if you live in America, you do, in any shape or form, documented, undocumented, visa, whatever the case may be. Do they come to my house? A lot of people are concerned about federal officers knocking on your door. No, they don't if you fill out the form. So if you fill out the form online or over the phone, or you fill out the paper questionnaire and turn it in, a government representative will not come to your door. If they do come to your door, they don't enter your home. So they will stand outside on the porch, unless you, of course, invite them in. That's a few. But they will not. They will stand outside. People are concerned about both of those things. Is it safe? Will?
Yep. Absolutely. Sorry, Lynn, get some water. And I had a question come in. Susan, yeah, you can access that video that she just showed from Long Beach Cap. It's actually already posted on our website. It's also part of that 2-hour Moodle Academy curriculum is to watch that. But it's already been posted at communityactionpartnership.com/census, or just click on us and then pick the census project. So I'll pick up with this one. So is it safe to provide the information? Yes, it is. Under the law, census data can only be used for statistical purposes. In other words, not personal level information. It cannot be disclosed for 72 years. People are, genealogy fans, and you're like, oh, but I see census data. Yeah, after 72 years, you can find out where Grandfather Norman lived, right? And when the census was done. But no, nothing personal, nothing identifiable can be released for 72 years. We didn't learn until we started the project. Not only is it illegal to disclose information on their first day of work, everybody who works for the census has to raise their hand and take an oath that they will keep the data private. If they fail to do so, the census prosecutes, and they do prosecute, and it is up to 5 years in jail and up to $250,000 in fines. That is for their lifetime, not just while they work for the census. They are sworn to confidentiality. It has never been breached, and the more we've learned about it, the surer we are assuring you, so you can tell your clients that it is, in fact, safe to do this. Now, the next question is, can I help someone fill out their form? Yes, but, and you'll see it here with the cannot. We're going to be wrapping up. We're coming up to the top of the hour, and we do end up on time. So we're going to zip through these last ones. Yes, you can help them get online. Yes, you can read over the questions with them and say, what does this mean? Do they live in my house every other day? Well, what day is the first? Do you count them or not? What you cannot do is actually fill out the form or type the answers in for them. You can, however, dial the census number on the phone and hand it to somebody in your office to do the telephone response. So you can do everything except fill out the form for them. You can assist them to understand it. You can assist them to find a translator on the phone. You can do any of that. Accessibility issues, again, we've talked about there's online, there's paper, there's telephone, and that there are interpreters available in 13 languages on the phone, and they will track down others if necessary. And the Complete Count Committee is a great place to sort of collate community resources on that. So you can follow us on social media. You can sign up for the newsletter. You all, by definition, are signed up for the newsletter, of course, as well as the Complete Count Committee newsletter, which we alternate weeks on. So you should get one from us a week, except for sometimes maybe the 5th week of the month. But each one will be the Complete Count Committee, one will be the general census e-news. But feel free to forward and have other people sign up. We're happy to have more folks getting that. We will be starting here shortly a private Facebook group where community action staff can actually engage with each other on questions that they're getting from clients. It's actually going to be a place where folks can do peer support, as well as in the forums on the Academy. But we recognize that most of our network isn't going to do the Academy, but most of them do Facebook. So action steps. Lindsay, let me bring it back to you to bring it home in the 2 minutes we have left.
Yes, for sure. So you guys already have your agency's Complete Count Committee member. That's probably you. If there's somebody else in your agency, you guys know your agencies better than we do. So if you need another person, please add another person. If your executive director also wants to get those emails, that's fine with us. We are not here to dictate how you run your agency, so please feel free to do that as you need. Find your local Census Bureau partnership specialist and bring them on board. They will give you resources. Figure out if there's a local Complete Count Committee in your area and how you can be a part of it, or how you can even just get notes from the meetings afterwards just to see what's going on. Recruit to fill those jobs. Figure out who your target folks are. I mean, you can assume that most people who come to your agency are probably in an undercounted category, but you can go on Plan the CUNY and the Rome sites and figure out who those are. And train your agency to talk about the census. That 7-minute primer video is a great place to start. Any questions? And in the meantime, while we wait for the questions to come in, I'm Lindsay. That's Lil. These are our email addresses. You are more than welcome to also reach out to Jim Masters and Alan Stansberry if you have a really in-depth question. It might be better for you to go through us because that way we can include that information on the next newsletter, but they are our subject matter experts. I'm going to leave this up. Lil, do you have any questions?
We do not, because we've been answering them as we go. But sometimes I know, for most of us, the questions emerge in an hour or tomorrow or whatever. Please just email Lindsay, me, or both of us. Whoever gets to it first will respond. If we don't know the answer, we will find the answer. We regularly communicate with our census colleagues. In fact, I'm going to be on a panel next week with the Head Start Association and the census. on a panel at their DC conference, so we have ample context that we can get more information directly from the census. So if there are questions, please do let us know. I encourage you, I ask you actually, to please take or get someone in your agency to register and take that Moodle Academy course. We've piloted it, we've had a couple of folks walk through it, but we would like more feedback on the course itself and how it works for folks in the field. So as a member of the Complete Count Committee, that would be a great, easy lift for you, would be to go through that or ask someone to go through it and just give us some feedback on whether it works well for you in the field. And what questions you might want us to add to it. We tried to keep it very basic. It's intended for frontline and client-facing staff to be able to go through it and feel confident that they know enough about the census to be a good ambassador for it. But we look forward to it. We will be posting this webinar. It takes about a day for us to get the recording and download it and post it. We will post it on our census page under Complete Count Committee meetings, and then we will post all the meetings recordings because the network's welcome to watch as well. So we hope it's been a useful time. Thank you all for attending with us, for sticking with us, and for being willing to be part of this, because as it said on one slide, we say in the promise, we care about the entire community, therefore we count the entire community. People count, they deserve to be counted. Thank you so much for being with us in the webinar today. We look forward to seeing you in your states on webinars, at conventions and conferences. Feel free to call us or email us. Take care.